Hi, I'm Sebastian Cape, and today I'm going to be talking about the murder of William Robinson. In 1868, a mysterious murder was committed on William Robinson. William was murdered on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. William Robinson was a black man living on the island for roughly a decade, and he and many other African Americans came to America to avoid slavery and prosecution before the Civil War occurred in the United States. William was well respected and liked among his community where he lived, which made it even weirder that he was murdered. Along with two other murders that happened on the island in 2 years, many of the residents became scared of what was happening. An indigenous man named Tom was charged and convicted with the murder. I'm going to get into it a little bit more, but my thesis on this whole thing was that the murder of William Robinson may have been Tom, yet there was insufficient evidence, and he was either prematurely convicted or even falsely convicted. So I'm going to be talking about the first of the three murders that occurred. So the first murder was discovered by James Ogilvy in 1867. The murder was discovered in the floorboards of a burned down cabin. The body was never identified due to the body being burned and partially decomposed, so no one really knew who it was. Yet it was known that the victim was black. The murderer was never found or convicted, but Thomas Griffiths, who was a prominent white man in this community, was seen in the area when the cabin was burning down. Although when it came time to investigate the murder, he was never really investigated that thoroughly. He was also reportedly seen carrying a gun while the cabin was burning down. Griffiths owned cattle around the area, and it is rumored that the people who lived in that cabin were stealing cattle. Now to the second murder, which happened 8 months after the William Robinson murder. So there seem to be some parallels between this and the William Robinson murder. The victim of this murder was Giles Curtis. Similar to William Robinson, he was respected and liked by most. So it begs the question, who would want to kill seemingly harmless people? And was it the same person? Now into the trial and investigation of the William Robinson murder. So I don't think I really want to try to pronounce his name, so I'm just going to stick with Tom. Tom was charged with the murder. Charged and convicted with the murder. He was hanged on July 24th, 1869. The trial and investigation were both reasonably short, and they were very flawed. It took roughly 3 months from the time the trial started to the day Tom was hanged. There were two other suspects, Manuel Douay and Hiram Clark Wims, yet Tom was investigated the most. On to the prosecutor's case. There wasn't any monumental pieces of evidence, or even just conclusive evidence, which makes it, and this really is what makes the case such a mystery. Sue Tass, who is a member of Tom's tribe, testified against Tom in court, saying he was with Tom when the murder occurred, and that Tom wanted him to help him during the murder. Now into the defense's case. So there was reportedly an axe that was stolen from William Robinson by Tom. This was a pretty prominent part in the evidence, as people said, how would he have this axe if he wasn't part of the murder, if he didn't commit the murder, if he didn't go to William Robinson's house? Yet Charlie, Tom's brother, said that he in fact made the handle for the axe. So due to the lack of consistency in the evidence and stories, this leads to reasonable doubt, meaning that Tom should not have been convicted. So the motives for the possible murder and false conviction. The jury for the trial consisted of only white men for the sake of it, leading to the belief that Tom may have been prematurely convicted and that racism played a factor in the decision. Indigenous people in Canada were being oppressed heavily, and quite frankly, still are. The courtroom had legal issues, and that was one way that the government tried to oppress them even more. Tom was convicted with insufficient evidence, and when going over the evidence, it is shown that there is reasonable doubt that he was in fact the murderer. So what would happen today if the murder were to happen today? So for starters, The murderer would not have been hanged simply because capital punishment is not used in Canada. The murderer would have been charged with first-degree murder, similar to what happened then, and the prosecutor would have needed much more evidence. There wasn't a lot of evidence for either party involved, and last time I checked, you were innocent until proven guilty. It is not the job of the defense to prove their client or to prove the defense innocent. It is the job of the prosecutor to charge the defense guilty. And that is not what occurred in this case. Tom was prematurely convicted and realistically falsely. He may have been the murderer, but there was not enough evidence to convict him. The lack of consistency in the evidence and lack of evidence in general leads to reasonable doubt, meaning he should not have been convicted and hanged in 1868, and that there was some serious issues in not only this investigation, but the legal system at the time. Thank you, and this is the William Robinson murder.